This is the Observations Podcast for Sunday, 13 October 2024. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Dale Franks.
Michael Wade.
Hi. It was kind of funny. Michael came on and I was already shutting off sound because of the delay between what goes on live here and what you see on YouTube. There's a significant delay. And so Michael comes on and he already knows he hates his lighting and he hates his background. And so I'm sitting here watching in enforced silence because you can't hear Michael until I press his button. And so I was sitting here watching in enforced silence while you were complaining about how everything looked.
I still can't get it right.
The funny thing is, it's not like it changes from week to week.
Well, I just changed it because the problem has been that I'm getting blinded by my larger lights, my side lights here, and my sort of soft lights they're not illuminating enough so they really fix things. So I had it where I had one hard light and one soft light up high. But it's like it's been blinding me and whatever. It's just stupid studio shit.
The problem is you're not in a space that allows you to light it really correctly because of the limitations of size. And so it's just something you have to live with. I happen to be lucky enough that I've converted a bedroom to an office. And so I have enough room to put up lights on stands. And
I am literally in front of my HVAC system. That's what's behind me.
Yeah, I have a lot of room to walk around, but that's fine. You know what? It's going to be, I think, in places largely a humorous podcast because it has to be, because there are some things that happened this week that we're just going to have to look at. We're going to have to watch and we're going to have to deconstruct. And I imagine the deconstruction will be a little bit amusing. However, before we get to just the pure deconstruction part of it, I did want to start off with something that's going on in your neck of the woods, which is that the federal government has sued your state, Virginia, because he pulled a whole bunch of non-citizens off of the voter rolls, and they're going after him saying it's illegal for him to do this less than 30 days prior to the election. Never mind that it's illegal for them to be on the voting rolls in the first place. But it's illegal to remove them 30 days prior to election. Can you illuminate this in any way for us?
Well, I mean, let's just start with the obvious, that this is what the Harris-Biden administration finds important, that non-citizen voters should be kept on the rolls. I mean, that should be your first clue that something's not kosher here. There is, I don't even know what law they're citing. I don't know of any law that would prevent a state from purging non-citizens from their voter rolls. It doesn't exist as far as I know.
I think that the way that the DOJ explained it was that you're not supposed to change.
How did I screw this up?
You're not supposed to change the voter rolls 30 days prior to the election. And so that is apparently a thing in Virginia law.
Well, but that's not changing the voter rolls.
Well, it's removing voters from the rolls, and the feds are saying
but they're not voters. That's the thing. Is that better?
Yeah, look, barely. Michael, it does it doesn't really matter.
It's just bothering me, Dale. I mean, I understand we're not going for perfection, but
I get it. But yeah, I mean, that's, as far as I'm concerned, there's one reason and one reason only not to remove non-citizens from the voter rolls, and that's because you want them to vote.
Exactly. This is why Democrats fight. So, look, I've been saying this for literally well over a decade, almost 2 decades. I remember on Twitter having a pretty liberal guy, and we were friends. We exchanged ideas, and we argued. And during the Obama administration, I was like, well, the reason Obama wants all these immigrants come in is because he wants new voters. And he pshawed me so hard that he ended up actually deleting me, or blocking me or whatever it is on Twitter. I can't remember. But, and that had to be at least over a decade ago. And every day it turns out that I was just right. And I think about it sometimes. Does he remember that? Do you see what's going on now? you know, where they're basically almost blatantly saying they want all these illegal immigrants to come in and become voters.
Yeah.
And they sure as hell don't want to stop them from voting even while they're in illegal immigrant status.
Look, there's no way. I mean, look, you can talk all you want about how sacred and precious the right to vote is and how it has to be defended. And maybe I'm not, but maybe I would buy that. I wouldn't. If you were making that argument about like voter ID. Well, if you require voter ID, maybe not everybody can get it. It will disenfranchise, the blacks and the Hispanics, of course, always, because as everyone knows, they're not capable of obtaining IDs.
They're completely stupid and incapable.
Or driver's licenses. So we can't do. So look, it's a stupid argument, but as stupid as it is, it's colorable. But the idea that non-citizens can't be removed from the voter rolls for 30 days prior to the election, they don't have a right to vote in this country.
Right. They don't belong there to begin with.
Yeah. So,
I can tell you it's my own personal experience.
It's literally just a reason not to implement any voter security at all. And there's only one reason why you don't want to implement voter security.
Because you don't want any.
That's exactly right. I think the one advantage that we have to our system, and one of the things that does make cheating in terms of just printing out a whole bunch of ballots super hard. Sure, you can do it inside a city, but one of the
precinct,
but one of the really hard things to do, like at a statewide level, is to print up the correct votes for the correct counties or cities and precincts. Because sure, everybody's vote looks the same. Everybody's ballot looks the same. If you're like president, congressman, governor, and then all of a sudden we're out of the national and statewide offices. And there's 11 billion county commissioners and school board members and in many states
bond initiatives and
local
else,
judges, city elections and all of that stuff. To actually print up a whole bunch of fake ballots is kind of hard in this country because every single jurisdiction, even sometimes in the same county, you might have a friend that lives 3 minutes away from you. Half of his ballot is going to be different from yours. And so,
right.
So that is a great bar because of the way we do elections and because of how particular the ballots are for the people that live within 6 blocks of you are. It's hard to cheat on that side reliably because, it really does take a lot of thinky pain about how many ballots you need from what precincts and what those ballots have to look like and so forth. It certainly can be done. Chicago. But
Philadelphia, Fulton County.
Yeah, but it's not as easy to do at a statewide level. So that is a strength of our system. So how do you get around that? Well, just allow everybody who's not supposed to vote. Ship a whole bunch of illegal immigrants to a town of, I don't know, 25,000, ship 10,000 of them there, and then have voter ID law that just whenever they go in and get a driver's license, just registers them to vote automatically.
But it's even more than that, Dale, because it's not just, you don't even have to go so far as having those people vote. The fact that they're on the rolls and somebody knows it
Means that
means that,
somebody can vote.
right. I mean, we see this with the senior citizens, the vote gathering at these old folks' homes where, goddamn well, they go in there and basically vote for these old people who have no idea what the hell they're doing and turn those ballots in. I remember back in 2012 when unions were hiring people to go around, sign up Democrats, and give them a ballot, show them how to vote. And this was widespread. So they're getting paid to go out there and basically gather Democratic votes.
See, it makes cheating a lot easier if you have the ability to put in what are facially proper ballots from
right.
enrolled
because once
voters.
they're submitted. You can't separate them. How would you even begin to separate them?
There's no way that you could go in and figure out what was right and what was wrong in those ballots. You don't have to print a whole bunch of fake ballots. You don't have to get real ballots and try to figure out how to replicate them so you can print up a whole bunch of fake ones. You don't have to show up in the middle of the night with 100,000 ballots. Well, in Philadelphia,
unless you're in Wisconsin, then
I mean, it is possible.
You might have some extra in in the trunk of your car.
Yeah, like if Manhattan, New York, right? I mean, you've got a couple of million people there. You can come up with, you can print up the ballots and come up with the votes. Can you do that in some podunk county in Nebraska? Probably not. You have to have a big city, and you have to have a whole bunch of ballots that are the same, and you can do that. But again, why?
And you have to have no scrutiny for when your precinct or your city comes in with 115% of the voting population in votes.
Yeah, well, the way that you get rid of that is same-day voter registration.
Right.
Yeah, so you can just show up and register and vote all in one day. How convenient is that? And then, of course, we have a state like California who has, as we talked about last week, they've now made it illegal to ask for any ID when you go to vote. Plus, they send out a ballot to every single registered voter in California. Plus,
yeah, it's state law in Washington and Colorado.
Yeah, plus California has a motor voter. So just getting a driver's license,
everybody does,
registers you to vote. There is no way that California's election system is secure. There's just no way. They would have no way of knowing who is supposed to be voting, who is not supposed to be voting, because there are no checks on the system. You can't run a trustworthy, reliable democracy without a secure election system. You just can't. Because people will ultimately, true or not, and this is the great thing about it, whether it's true or not, they'll ultimately begin to think that you're running a meaningless fiction of democracy. And by the way, a lot of people already think that. One of the reasons why the 2020 election, and you'll never, by the way, never convince millions of people in this country that there wasn't skullduggery going on in that election, because of how so many states just completely threw out their election laws out the window and just said, hey, here's a whole bunch of ballot boxes. Anybody can just come in and dump out ballots. And we'll just gather them up and we'll count them on election day. Okay, if you want to hold non-secure elections, then don't expect us to all sit around and talk about the inviolable nature of our sacred democracy, because you've made a joke out of it.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, when we were trying to sell democracy in the Middle East, Iraq, the purple thumb. I mean, the, there was more integrity in those elections than there are in any of ours since that time. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, but look, I mean, that's not true all across the board. I mean, Florida after 2000 realized that their election system was a total shambles.
There are some states that have done some very good efforts. Georgia, Florida, like you said. Virginia is actually not too bad.
Yeah, Virginia.
Yeah, but there are lots of them.
Yeah, but we all know the states that don't have laws like that, and we all know how they're going to vote during this election. Interesting.
Yeah.
And so I just,
even though like it's like what good does it do California to run up the tally? I mean,
well, that's
we already know.
Well, you know that is the weird thing, because California is a state where just by registration alone, statewide, there are 2 times as many registered Democrat voters as Republicans, as opposed to the rest of the country, where if you look at the country as a whole, it's about it's about a third-ish Democrat, a third-ish Republican, and then a third-ish of independents.
Right.
In California, it's like 50-some% Democrats, 25% Republican, and then the rest are spread out among either the non-affiliated or all of the
Greens,
exactly.
communists.
And then whenever you look at the places where the vast majority of the votes come from, Los Angeles, 85% Democrat registration. San Francisco, 92% Democrat registration. And, Chris had come to me earlier.
Even Orange County is Orange County even a majority Republican anymore?
Even Orange County. Republicans lost Orange County. So, what? I keep telling Chris, California doesn't have to cheat because the electorate wants to vote this way. And she was coming in this morning. She was talking to me about, and in this case, it happened to be Seattle. And she said something about how bad things are going there and how upset people are. And my response was good. Good. People should get what they vote for. Seattle, Portland, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and they bitch and moan about how bad things are and how bad the quality of life has declined, blah, blah, blah. Good. This is what you asked for. And in a real democracy, people get what they ask for, and they get it good and hard.
Good and hard. Yep, that's true.
But you're right.
Well, there's no reason. Look, that has not changed. That's still going on. It's just that, wow. I mean, even an earthworm shrinks away from pain. And yet, Democrats just keep leaning into us, but it's got to work this time.
Yeah, well, what I also told Chris today in reference to that was, see, here's the thing. You've got a whole bunch of people who say to themselves, okay, I voted for this same thing 10 times, and it's worked out really bad. However, if I keep voting for the same thing over and over again, at some point, the exact opposite is going to happen. Okay, sure.
It's the no true Scotsman fallacy.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, it's the literal definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome.
According to Einstein.
Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy, but it really is starting to, and it has for a while, but it's really starting to chap my britches seeing the feds just pop in and say, oh, no, you can't take these people off the rolls. Well, they're non-citizens. They're not supposed to vote. Doesn't matter. 30 days prior to the election. And so what is the remedy?
The thing is, the process was started before then. So that's also...
But again, what is the remedy? Well, the only way that you can comply with your law is to ensure that these non-citizens remain on the voter rolls. What? Because that's the only remedy the feds could say. No, you got to keep them on the rolls. Well, that means they can vote. Well, yeah, that's not our problem.
Well, it is mine.
I just can't. There's no way that can be a good faith effort to preserve.
I'm wondering if there's
right
a lawsuit against the federal government here for denying actual voters their franchise. Because if somebody who is not supposed to vote votes, that cancels out my vote.
And especially if they get to do so because the feds enforced it in federal court.
Right. So you've got an actual cause there.
You've literally diluted the vote of an actual citizen. And
that's anti-constitutional.
Not that it seems that the American government cares as much about citizens as it does about non-citizens.
Well, they really don't, but
yeah, but it's just I saw that and I was just once again, and I don't know why I shouldn't be, but I was just amazed.
I know Youngkin's going pretty full force against that lawsuit. He is not bombastic or a bomb thrower or anything like that, but he is effective, and he is not afraid to go into those tough areas and force the federal government to actually stand its ground. And our Attorney General, Miares, absolutely unafraid. He's been incredibly effective, and I would not be surprised at all if this redounds to Virginia's benefit and makes the federal government look really stupid.
Well, let's hope so. We're 3 weeks out from this thing now. As hard as it is to
Isn't
believe.
that crazy? We've been dealing with it for so goddamn long.
I mean, no matter what happens, at least in some sense, it'll be a relief when it's over.
Oh God, yes.
Although,
yeah, what's that going to look like? And again, I keep saying, I don't think it matters who wins, who loses. It's going to be an absolute mess because the other side's simply not going to accept.
Look, you've already got Democratic House members who are refusing to commit to certifying the election.
Yep. Isn't that insurrection-y? I thought that was insurrection.
That was then. This is now. In any event. Moving on. Interesting. Speaking of this solicitousness that the government has for illegal immigrants. This popped up this week that I wanted to watch. It's about a minute long.
Is that Martha Raddatz?
That's Martha Raddatz, yes.
Yeah.
The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Okay, we don't even have to go any further than this yet. We are, but we don't have to go in this. What are you crazy Republicans complaining about? It's just a handful of apartment complexes that have been taken over by Argentinian gangs. I mean, it's not something we need to concern ourselves
Venezuelan
about.
gangs.
I'm sorry, Venezuela, not Argentinian. You know what? At this point, based on who the president of Argentina is, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that would be odd.
I'm not sure I'd mind Argentinian gangs coming up here.
They can come invade my town anytime they want.
And enforcing a rigorous libertarian free market philosophy.
You will be free.
Anyway, this is her interviewing J.D. Vance today. And, you got to listen to J.D.'s response.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border? Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting because you seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs. I worry so much more about that problem than anything else here. We've got to get American communities in a safe space again.
And I think that's pretty much all we need to hear of that response. And that's
Do you hear yourself?
Yeah, that's the perfect response.
He really is freaking good. I mean, we already knew he was smart. He's very articulate. But man, he in the heat of the moment, he is just so cool, calm, and collected and razor sharp. He just gives it back. And he's exactly what we always hoped Trump would be.
Focused, cogent.
That focus and that, just getting right in there. But he's so erudite about it. And he's not condescending. He's not mean. He's not, he's not pejorative. He's just straight to the freaking balls, right there, accurate. You just said that it's only a handful? Like, isn't that a problem? That's not a problem to you?
The acceptable number of apartment complexes that are being taken over and run by foreign gangs would be 0.
Right. I mean, if we're talking about a real country, the most powerful country in the fucking world that has ever existed, yeah, that would be 0.
And the putting it up, this is a minor problem. The Aurora police will take care of that. We don't need to worry. You don't need to worry your pretty little head about the gangs taking over a small number of apartment complexes. You have so many bigger fish to fry.
Oh my God.
And
and that's why, do you even hear yourself?
Yeah. And by the way, it's a master class in actually turning the premise of the question away, because the fundamental premise of that question is, okay, let's say that Argentinian gangs have taken over,
Venezuelan.
Venezuelan. I don't know. Venezuelan gangs have taken over 3, let's say 4 apartment complexes. Is that the acceptable number? And, as long as it's not too many apartment complexes, it's perfectly okay. I mean, that is the unstated premise of the question. That
we can give them a little space, right?
Yeah,
we have lots of apartment complexes. What if we don't have all of them under control?
Sure. I mean, the gangs are going to control some. That's just the new normal. And by the way, that's the other premise. The acceptance of this as just, this is normal.
Right.
The police will figure it out.
Well, and unfortunately, it is becoming normal given the worldwide political class. They'll just put up with this in order to get what they want, which is more immigrants.
Yeah, but of course the political class isn't the one that puts up with it. The political class isn't
they
the
don't
one,
suffer from it.
Yeah, the political class isn't the one that suffers from what economists like to call the externalities of this sort of foreign invasion.
That's absolutely right.
Because they're going to have their gated communities and their 24-hour security. It's you rubes and hayseeds that live in flyover country that have to pay for it. And, you're all rubes and hayseeds anyway. Why should we care? And that is the attitude, even if they wouldn't put it quite so bluntly. It's just like the same argument about, who's going to pick our fruits and vegetables?
Right. Who's going to clean our toilets?
Okay. Yeah, sure. And who was that? Ozzy Osbourne's daughter.
Yeah, his daughter.
On The View. Yeah, who's going to clean our toilets? Okay. Do you not realize that you are implicitly making the argument that there has to be a permanent underclass whose labor you can abuse so that you can have a more comfortable life? Do you not realize that implication of your argument?
And the rest of the time they're out there saying that that's the job of capitalism, is to exploit people for their labor skills.
Yeah, but, who's going to clean our toilets? Well, at the wages you're paying, sure. But let's not pretend that we aren't advocating for a permanent underclass of toilet cleaners who are going to be locked into that for their whole life.
That's exactly. And landscapers and road workers and whatever else. I mean, look, I don't have a problem with seasonal workers coming up here on a visa, picking crops and doing some construction and whatever else. I mean, we need the bodies, and if we can get them at a good price, that's fantastic. But they should also be protected by our own laws and not being paid under the table, because then at least our folks, Americans, also have a fair shot at those things. It's the getting paid under the table part that drives down wages, and then all the remittances that they send back to, Mexico and Guatemala and Honduras and El Salvador and wherever else, takes that money out of the country. It's going to come back at some point.
And by the way, if you want to talk about somebody who really didn't like seasonal workers and illegal immigration,
Che Guevara. Not Che Guevara.
Cesar Chavez.
Cesar Chavez, yes.
Yeah, go back to the
he
guy
was very much against illegal immigration.
Yeah, but
matter of fact, when he was unionizing the farm workers, that was one of his biggest bugbears, was that they're scabs. They're coming in and undermining everything I'm doing here.
Yeah, they're taking my union jobs.
Yep.
So it's not that complex of a problem.
It's not even that complex of an idea, and yet we pretend like it's, or we, the media, class. The politicians pretend like this is some ornate thing where this isn't really affecting that, and that's not really affecting this. There's a lot of,
well, look,
higgery jiggery going on in the middle there that you shouldn't worry your pretty little heads about. We'll take care of it.
And besides, it's so hard to fix, they'll tell us. I mean, this is the question that has been asked for the last couple of weeks. What are you going to do? You're just going to deport 22 million people?
Yes.
How are you going to do that?
Deport them.
Well, certainly we aren't going to do it with that attitude. However, we can probably make a lot of them self-deport.
That's absolutely right. If you require, what's that? There's that Fed program to ensure that the people you've hired are actual citizens or green card holders, whatever, that they're legally here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it's a toothless program. Because nobody
but
ever
it could be
checks
made
up on
more toothful or toothsome.
Yeah. Well, see, the problem is that would require that you piss off the donor class by starting to fine them billions of dollars and perhaps even tossing them in jail for a violation of immigration law. And we never want to go that far.
Yeah, nobody likes to piss off the donor class.
And that's the problem.
I mean, I do, but
the donor class wants unlimited immigration.
Yeah, it's what some people call the what are the organizations, your business council, what are they called?
Oh, like the Chamber of Commerce and
Chamber
like
of
that.
Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce people who have actually a great deal of influence, more than you realize. And those are the people that, and there's nothing wrong with wanting cheap labor. It's the way they go about it and what they're willing to sacrifice, which is our own people, in order to get that.
Yeah, well, I have seen signs that some things are changing, and I'm not sure they're good signs. Because apparently what we are running into is a shortage of real good craftsmen, plumbers, other tradesmen. And venture capital is now going in and starting to buy up plumbing companies and things like that because...
Yeah, I saw that earlier today.
Yeah, so maybe there is a sign that that regular Americans can actually start a plumbing business and make a good wage, or a framing business, or whatever it is.
You start throwing money at those sorts of jobs, this is price signaling, right? I mean, more people are going to go towards that.
Yeah, once the venture capitalists see it, then
the barriers are much lower to entry. I mean, they're still high. You're not going to become a master plumber overnight, right? You're not going to become a master builder or an HVAC technician overnight. There's going to be a long, apprenticeship and training period, but you get paid while you're learning, as opposed to going to college, paying money, and then coming out with no idea what the hell you're going to get.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is in a certain way an argument, and I think a very good one, that we have shot ourselves in the foot in terms of the trades with this demand that everybody has to go to college.
Yeah, that's just stupid.
Not everybody has to go to college. And by the way, all the college education in the world won't get your air conditioning working if your compressor goes out.
Actually, none of it will, to be quite honest.
Yeah. So we've built a weird society in many ways with this requirement that every kid has to go to college. That's just the dumbest thing possible. Sure.
Well, it started with this idea that the reason that there were poor people is that they didn't have opportunities for education, right? So we made it even easier and easier and easier for people to get into college and to get college degrees. Well, it didn't change anybody's intellect, and it didn't make college degrees more worthwhile. It actually diluted the value of a college degree, such that nowadays, in order to get a professional job, you better have a master's, PhD, or some terminal degree.
It reminds me of the end of The Wizard of Oz, when the Scarecrow wanted a brain. And the Wizard of Oz says, well, I can't give you a brain, but I can give you a diploma. It's called the
and that's really what we've
option. Done. Yeah. I can't give you a brain. Can't give you a career.
Actual education with credentialism.
And there used to be 10,000 Votech schools in every city that would teach you trades like welding and plumbing and HVAC. And by the way, it's something that Mike Rowe has been talking about for 10, 15 years now.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
About how
they're good jobs.
Yeah, they're good jobs. Really good they pay jobs. Well.
And what's great is you don't need to be qualified in every single state. So as an attorney, I have to get qualified in any state that I work in. That's not the state I'm barred in. If I'm a plumber or an HVAC repairman, I don't have to get qualified in every state. I can go anywhere.
Those are transferable skills.
And I can set up my own shop, and I can find people, train them, and grow my business. I've seen this forever. Some of the most successful people I know are plumbers. Plumbers are in very short supply, but high demand. And only the best plumbers are really going to make it. But it's not so hard that you can become a great plumber. But you're going to need some skills, and you're going to need some experience.
Look, even if
once you get that skill and experience, you can set up on your own. You can hire other people. You can grow a business.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody's going to want to go through the pain of growing a business and the risk of growing a business. But
True, but you can operate on your own if you want.
if you're a master plumber, you can work for, your local rescue rooter or whatever and still make a really decent wage.
Oh, absolutely.
But anyway, speaking of men and the jobs that men do, Kamala Harris came out with a campaign commercial. So I thought we should look at it because I wanted to have some fun.
I think I've seen it already, but okay.
So
let's go.
they got some real men to make a
Yes.
Kamala Harris ad. Now, as it turns out, these real men are all out of work actors in Los Angeles, and 3 of them, I believe, are gay. However, they're all real men. And so I wanted to go through this ad. There's actually 2 things I wanted to say. I wanted to see this ad, and I just wanted to have the brief clip of Tim Waltz hunting, trying to load his shotgun. But here we go. Here is the Kamala Harris ad, and I think probably what I can do.
I'm a man.
Is make this. It's too big.
Man. And I'm man enough.
I'm man enough to enjoy a barrel-proof bourbon.
Neat.
Here's what it is. It's trying to present men while using feminine persuasion techniques. Right? It's like, oh, look at these other men. Are you as good as them? Do you compare with them? That doesn't work as well on men as it works on women.
Women,
Man
right,
enough to
yeah.
cook my...
By the way, he's just sitting on the tailgate of his truck with his hands neatly folded, as men do.
Not quite cross-legged, but, doing a 3/4 pose.
In a very manly pose with his, I just love how his hands are so neatly folded over his thigh, sitting on the bed of what is clearly his truck. Who else's truck would it be?
My steak rare. Man enough to deadlift 500, then braid the out of my daughter's hair. You think?
Okay. We got
That last guy was gay, does not have a daughter.
Yeah. Although I have no doubt that he knows how to braid hair. Okay. I just want to point out something. This fella's standing here in what appears to be some sort of agricultural background, but which is, based on the landscaping I see, clearly some nursery that they found in the Los Angeles area. And he's carrying his bucket. His nice, new, completely unused, galvanized bucket.
Think I'm afraid to rebuild a carburetor? I eat carburetors for breakfast.
Okay, first of all, I think what you meant was carbs. Second of all, nobody has sold a carbureted automobile in this country since 1994. Every vehicle sold in this country in the last 30 years has had fuel injection. Not
Right.
true for motorcycles.
True.
But for automobiles, yes, it is. So what I suggest you do is take your big bucket. First of all, fill it full of dirt or something, scuff it up a little bit so it looks like, it's a bucket you use. And
It's
it
his
doesn't-
piss bucket. Let's be fair.
Put some dirt in there, put some bacon, eggs, and a shit ton of hash browns, whatever it is that makes that bucket look like it's used.
I ain't afraid of bears. That's what bear hugs are for.
I'll tell you
I ain't afraid of bears.
Wait, the bears? What?
That's what bear hugs are for.
another thing I sure as shit am not afraid of. Women.
I'm not afraid of women.
I'm not afraid of women.
Like, guys do not talk like this at all.
I'm not afraid of women. Sure,
Who
you're
the
not.
fuck is?
I don't know. That expression on his face does not convince me with the certainty of his
You
opinion.
think he might just be afraid of women?
Not afraid of women.
They want to control their bodies? I say go for it.
They want to use IVF to
Blink
start a
twice
family?
if you're being
I'm not afraid of
captured.
families.
They want to be childless cat ladies.
Have all the cats you want.
Woman wants to be president?
Well, I hope she has the guts to look me right in the eye and accept my full-throated endorsement.
Oh, God.
This is just not. And by the way,
This is how women have no clue what it's like to be an actual man.
Yeah, this is not. I mean, none of these guys are guys I'd pick as role models. Not that I pick many role models anyway. Which, by the way,
fair enough,
is another difference between.
But they're not dudes we'd hang out with.
Yeah, these. Yeah, I mean, other than the guy,
role model or not,
other than
they're not people that we would want to be around as men.
Okay, other than the bald-headed guy with the big beard, because I'm sure he'd be a hoot when he started yelling about the Freemasons. But, other than that, I mean, this is the most... It's not just inane. It says, I present to you the cringiest political ad. Yeah, it's cringy. Because this is the type of persuasion technique that you would use to persuade women. Not the type that you would use to persuade men. This kind of ridicule. Basically what you're saying is, I'm a man and you're not. And if you disagree with me, you're not a real man. To which the average man response is, hey, how about you go fuck yourself?
Right. Do you remember that Nora somebody who she eventually ended up dying by assisted suicide, but she went undercover. She was a gay woman. She went undercover. She got herself gussied up so that she looked like a man.
Yeah, she lived like a man for like a year. And
yeah, it was almost a year.
And it broke
and
her.
It became so traumatic for her.
She committed suicide.
Yeah. And she wrote a book about it. It was really, really interesting, her observations, because she was just being completely honest. She lived that year, or however long it was, as a man, and she said she had to stop because she started to hate women. She was having a real problem in that women had no clue what men were going through. And the thing is, even after she came out of the closet, as it were, those guys were still like, yeah, but you're still coming bowling, right? Like, yeah, we get you're a girl, but you're still coming to the bowling, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really is amazing the disconnect that the political class has with what the day-to-day life of men is like. And speaking of the political class and not understanding the day-to-day life of men, I present to you Governor Tim Walz, who decided he was going to go hunting. And he was going to take his shotgun out and do a little pheasant hunting, I guess. The shotgun.
Has he got a 16 gauge there?
No, it's a 12 gauge, but he did pick the worst shotgun for. He did pick the worst shotgun for hunting he possibly could. A Benelli A400 semi-automatic shotgun.
For pheasants?
Yeah, and hunting with a whole group of people with a semi-automatic shotgun. Probably not a great idea. I'd probably want, a double-barreled shotgun or over.
Did he ask Dick Cheney for advice on that?
Yeah, so he can just go out there with this Benelli A400 and just start blasting away right in the middle of a crowd of people. And by the way, I just want to point out, not a single one of these people looks like they have worn this orange gear in their life.
Yeah. It is interesting that they all have the exact same uniform.
Yeah, and it's also
like maybe they all bought it at the same time.
Yeah, they did all buy it at the same time, the day before this was filmed, right. Because there is not a stain or a mark, and anybody who's ever had any high-vis yellow or high-vis orange gear knows that there's going to be marks on you there. Put it on, it's going to start getting dirty. This stuff is just as fresh as can be. But anyway, Tim Walz has his very nice Benelli A400, not a field gun. It's definitely more of a trap shooting gun. It's also heavy as shit. Why would you take that? But in any event, here he is.
He's a hunt pheasant.
He's getting ready to load this bad boy up.
And it never fits quite right. It never fits quite right. Just not quite right. How do you give it back?
Governor, what kind of gun is it?
How do you...
This is a Beretta A400.
I bought it when
But this guy's been hunting before, hasn't he? He grew up in Nebraska. He's had to been hunting before.
Yeah, I don't know what tapping the butt does. He still didn't load it.
And it never fits quite right.
He's just playing with it. He can't figure out how to load that Beretta.
What in the hell? I mean, I'm not even a hunter and I know how to do that.
Yeah, but again, that's not the point. The point is the picture of him in his orange hunting gear holding a gun.
His very clean hunting gear.
Yes, his very, very clean hunting gear. I love his chaps too, because, you know, that's what you wear.
Because
you wear your chaps whenever you're out pheasant hunting.
Yeah. So he wore his duck hunting gear to go pheasant hunting.
But that's fine. But if I'm the guide leading that hunting group, he's the problem guy I'm going to watch for the whole. The guy who can't.
No, we don't do that.
The guy who can't load his shotgun, you can't see that it's unloaded from any distance, and who can just pop off. I think the A400 holds 5 rounds, but it doesn't matter.
It's semi-automatic, so you just can.
Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, right.
Which, again, if you're shooting
now, is that on
crap,
the rod, or is that in the chamber? Does it have the rod?
Well, it's semi-automatic. It has a tubular magazine in the foregrip, and so you load
the rod.
Yeah, so you
throw
load
that in there.
So you load it from the bottom. You fill the magazine,
yeah.
And then I don't have a Benelli, or a Beretta A400.
They're supposed to be really nice.
Yeah, but they're heavy guns. They're trap shooting guns. They're not field guns. They're not hunting guns. Usually, if you're going to go out hunting, especially in a large group of people, you take a break open shotgun so that when it's empty, when you open it up, it's obvious that the gun is safe because it's open.
Yeah, pre-slitter, yeah.
Also, the Beretta's, my understanding is it's a heavier shotgun. But I believe to load it, you have to pull the charging handle back before you start throwing rounds in the magazine. And again, I don't have a Beretta A400. I would have a Remington 870 if I was getting anything. But in any event, that was Tim Waltz and his hunting. Once again, you know, trying to appeal to the real men. What I think is the most fascinating thing.
He's had to have been hunting before. I mean, honestly, right?
He's from Minnesota. He lived out in a
He's
rural
from Nebraska.
Well, from Nebraska, but I mean, he now lives in Minnesota and has for several years.
He's had to have been hunting at some point.
Yeah, you would think. He had to have gone bird hunting, goose, duck, something. But
at least duck.
But you couldn't tell it from that. He's clearly not familiar enough with that firearm to handle it confidently.
Well, maybe it's been a while.
Yeah, I'm sure it has. But in any event, there was that, you know, more real men stuff going on from the Harris campaign. What I think is more interesting, speaking of men doing things with the Harris campaign, is this tension between the Harris campaign and the Biden White House. And it's gotten...
I brought this up earlier this week.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point now where it is now showing up as a newsworthy story. And I think Biden has done two things in the past week that makes it look like he is, in a very subtle way, and in a way that you can't actually accuse him of doing, even though, you know, we're gonna. I think he is. I think he's going after her campaign. There was that one. Hold on. I may have put the same thing in two. Did I put the same thing in two? Yeah, I put the same thing in two links, so it's the same link. But the idea is that, first of all, Kamala Harris has been going out with this, change thing. I loved this thing that she did with Barack Obama coming out saying, you know, it's time to turn the page. And Barack Obama, who once again is disappointed in all of us, but is especially disappointed in black men, we seem to be unable to stop disappointing Barack Obama, unfortunately. But it's time to turn the page. And then, of course, Stephen Miller's response, turn the page from what? The last 3 years? But Joe Biden came out and then said, oh, yeah, Kamala Harris has been an integral part of my administration. She's been a part of...
She was involved in every decision.
Every decision this administration has made, she's been in the room. Hell, she was the last person in the room. Now, that is not directly attacking her. In fact, it sounds as if he's supporting her.
Right.
But it directly undercuts this turn the page thing that her campaign is trying to push.
Then she adds on top of that, though, by saying, not being able to say what she would have done differently. The media, her friendly media friends who are trying to support her, have set her up to differentiate herself from Biden no less than 3 times. She failed every single time.
It's like one of those gimme questions, right? What would you have done differently? If you are trying to run a turn the page... Well,
I would have closed the border.
Yeah, if you're trying to run a turn the page campaign. Okay, you're the page. You're the vice president. Now, granted, the vice president's only job, really, certainly constitutionally, is to call the White House every morning to check and see if the president is still alive. And then you're free to shut off
and to break ties in the Senate.
Yeah, and break ties in the Senate, which she has definitely done.
She's done more than any other vice president ever in history.
And so, okay, but when you're asked what would you have done differently, have an answer. Say, there's no daylight between Joe Biden and I. I wouldn't have done. I can't think of a single thing that I would have done differently. Okay, then.
And she looks surprised when she gets asked these questions.
Then what page is being turned here? Right. Then she makes the mistake, and I never would have done this as vice president, because this is super perilous to do. To come out and say, hey, I tried to call Ron DeSantis and he wouldn't take my call.
Yeah, what a dumbass
Okay,
move.
First of all, that better have happened, because Ron DeSantis' response was, she's never called me. And I haven't talked to her. Why would I?
She's not. You don't mess with one of the best politicians in the world.
Why would it? But first of all, he just denied flat out that she had ever called him. And then second, he says, why would I? Because she's not in the chain of command. She has nothing to do with any of this.
Yeah, I'm actually dealing with real shit here.
Yeah, I'm talking to the president of the United States. And we're working together with the president.
And then what did Joe Biden do?
Kamala Harris doesn't have a part in this.
And what did Joe Biden do?
So, of course, the press goes running to Joe Biden. Did you hear what Ron DeSantis said? And Joe Biden goes, Ron DeSantis has been doing a great job. He's called me up.
He's a phenomenal governor.
He's a phenomenal governor. We've given him everything he's asked for. Well, hell,
and he's been very thankful and has worked so closely with us.
I even gave him my private number so that if there's anything he needs, I can get it to him.
Oh, my God. Yeah, no, I think that Biden is so vindictive and in petty mode. He wants her to lose simply because he knows she's not going to be around long enough to worry about the consequences. And he wants to be able to say, I told you, I would have beat him. I would have beat him like I had taken behind the gym in high school. But you put her up. You kicked me out. And look what you got. That's what he wants.
He has got to be incensed at the fact that the Obama team came in, basically forced him out of the race.
Relieved him of his duty.
3 days after he said he wasn't going anywhere. And they set it up and they had her sitting there ready to go, so there wouldn't have to be any primary, there wouldn't have to be any voting. We'll just switch over to the black gal and she'll take over. And I can only think that Joe Biden sees what the Obama team did and then what Harris did is just a blatant stab in the back.
Yeah. Well, and he's not wrong.
Well, no, he's not.
I mean, look, let's face it. Obama never respected him. Not that he deserves respect. I mean, and frankly, nobody in the political establishment of Democrats really respects him. They thought he was controllable. That's all they thought about him. And they were right to a certain extent. But they did not count on his vindictiveness and his egotistical, self-worth. He is pissed that the one thing he always wanted was to be president. Right? Finally gets it, fails at it miserably. They cast him aside at the last moment and then give it to the idiot that he picked as his vice president because she was an idiot and wouldn't threaten his his presidency. And then they just toss him aside. Oh yeah, no, he's got some issues against Obama, against Schumer, Clinton's. I mean, really all of the Democratic establishment, and certainly Harris. I think he's exacting his due right now.
And by the way, he's doing it in such a way that even though it's obvious what he's doing,
it's actually sort of clever.
It's clever. I mean, say what you want about Joe Biden's mental decline, but when it comes to being a vindictive son of a bitch, Joe Biden
he's good at that. Yeah. That's not. He doesn't even have to think about that.
Yeah, that's just
natural.
That's just baked into the Joe Biden cake, my friend.
Right.
And look, the Democrats were pretty sure it would work. I mean, if I was doing, and we've been trying to stay away from horse race stuff, although with 3 weeks left to go, we're going to have to get back into it.
Hard to avoid it, yeah.
But gut feeling is that at this point, the bloom has come off of the Kamala Harris rose. Or Kamala Harris, whatever the correct pronunciation is.
I still don't know.
She's an empty suit, and a lot of people are starting to see that. And I think that on balance, if I was to predict this election, I predict Trump wins it.
I think that's right. Especially because the way it's being projected by the mainstream media is on a national consensus as opposed to, swing states, electoral college consensus. And she's getting pounded in these swing states. She is not doing well in Michigan. She is not doing well in Wisconsin. She is not doing well in Pennsylvania or Georgia. Or even North Carolina. I mean, she's having issues in all of these states.
Here's real clear
Nevada
politics.
Is one where she could pick up, but she's having a problem there.
Here's RCP's current electoral map with no toss-ups. Now, obviously, some of these toss-ups are well within the margin of error, but
a lot of them are, yeah, including those Rust Belt states. Pennsylvania, Michigan. I mean, they're still within the margin of error. So is North Carolina. I don't know about Georgia. Nevada certainly is. But I mean, for the most part, she has to have those Rust Belt states. I don't think she's going to win Ohio. I don't think she's going to win West Virginia. She might win Michigan. I don't think she's going to win Pennsylvania. If she doesn't have Pennsylvania and Michigan, she's toast.
Well, she doesn't need Michigan if she picks up North Carolina. But she has to win Pennsylvania. She does not win Pennsylvania.
She has to win Pennsylvania.
If she doesn't win Pennsylvania, this thing is over unless Trump loses North Carolina, Georgia, and Michigan.
It's not going to happen. He might lose one of those three. He's not going to lose all three.
Yeah, I mean,
he's not going to lose two of those three.
I mean, worst case scenario, this thing comes down to 270 on election, or 269 on election night, and then we got to do this in the House.
Oh, that'll be fun.
But if we do it in the House,
let's do it. Let's root for that.
Yeah, we haven't done that actually since
I would
Rutherford.
like to kind of see how that would work.
We haven't done it since Rutherford B. Hayes.
I mean, what, 180 years?
Well, no, Rutherford B. Hayes was 18. I mean, he was after Grant, so.
Oh, so 100.
Or was he before Grant? Like, was that 1876? May have been 1876.
So it'll be 150 years.
Yeah, so 1876, which, wow, seems so close to the modern era, and yet was so far ago, so long
We're getting
ago.
old, Dale.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, that's what it's looking like now. So we'll see. By the way, I did want to share with you one thing that I came across this week, and this is, I think, very emblematic of how the Democrats hope that the electorate sees things. And it was just this. It's an oldie and a goodie from a couple of years ago, where this woman is talking about Glenn Youngkin. Hundreds are stranded on I-95 in Virginia for hours. Does Governor Youngkin care? Of course not. Proof Virginia voted for the wrong person for governor. Youngkin ain't governor yet. Still the other guy. Thank goodness Governor Northam has put together teams to clear. Okay. Thanks for letting me know that you're a serious political observer whose opinions we need to pay attention to. One final thing before we go, because it is 6:06 and we have one thing to talk about it, and it was Carlos Maza this week writing an article basically saying we can't be trusted to just talk about stuff anymore.
I didn't see this.
Yes, I know it sounds inflammatory, but every piece of evidence, every single one, points to the fact that we need really aggressive government regulation of speech platforms. The free market doesn't work, and it never will.
I suspected that. I really, really, really thought that might be the problem. I didn't want to admit it to myself, but I can see it now.
Look, the mask is off. The mask is off.
When was it on? It's they've been blatant about this for at least a decade.
Yeah, but they weren't writing articles in the Atlantic about how we needed to have free speech removed. Now they're just doing that. We just have to censor everybody. This misinformation / disinformation thing has been turned into a huge wedge that they're going to try to drive into the electorate. And by the way, they're having success with doing it. Look at the polling on young people in this country. In other words, people who are under 30, about their support for free speech. The left has controlled the educational institutions to such an extent that they've managed to convince younger people through what I can only describe as indoctrination, that free speech is not what Americans think it is, and that free speech needs to be controlled, and that hate speech and disinformation has to be heavily regulated by the government.
How far has the left come since the 60s? Where free speech was everything.
Yeah, I mean, the whole freaking 60s disaster was kicked off by the free speech movement at Berkeley.
And this is where we end up. Interesting. It's a hallmark of leftist ideologies, whatever you want to call them. I don't really give a shit. That your mind needs to be controlled by those who knew better. I mean, that's literally what it comes down to. You are not capable of thinking for yourself. You can only think the way we tell you to, or else you're going to ruin yourself, comrade, and you're going to ruin the rest of us.
And you're too stupid to tell when you're being lied to. You're too stupid to handle disinformation or misinformation. You need someone smarter than you to tell you how to live your life. And if you don't like that, then you need to be restrained from complaining about it.
As a matter of fact, the more you don't like it, that's the more evidence that you are in need of our guidance.
Oh yeah, you're now the self-proving theorem. How first of all, and at bottom, this is the argument. First of all, I have a degree from Yale / Harvard, So I'm obviously much smarter than you. I understand things so much better than you. And the very fact that you disagree with me proves to me how much smarter I am than you and how incapable you are of running your own life. You know, I don't.
Yeah, it's a Kafkaesque trap that no matter which way you argue, you fall deeper into the trap.
Yeah, because the mere fact that you're arguing is proof that you need to be controlled.
And if you agree with me, well, then you just need to start listening.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. What I found was interesting is that after Elon Musk took over Twitter and the Twitter files started coming out, Michael Schellenberger, Barry Weiss, Matt Taibbi, just going chapter and verse at how the government was using, well, in this case, Twitter, since those are the files they had access to, how the government was using them to censor views that they wanted censored, that were either inconvenient to the government and that were always classified as disinformation or misinformation. I think the thing that has shocked me is how little impact that has made and how few people realize how serious the U.S. government has become, certainly for people on the left, how serious they've become about eliminating free speech.
It's scary how complacent people have been. Some of that is, I think, people on the leftward tilt simply don't believe any of this actually happened. They're in denial. The ones who aren't in denial think it's actually a good thing. And the rest of them are like, well, I don't know. Was I really affected by it? I don't think it's that big a deal. And I don't like the right. Okay. Like,
well,
there's so little understanding of the concept. I mean, Leviathan pretty much laid this out, right? Well, the reactions to Leviathan, that, it's one thing to have the Leviathan and be in control of it. It's another thing to be on the other side of that. And eventually it will swing towards your side. You create this powerful machine that can be so destructive and so demonstrably effective against your ideas. Well, once it swings to your side, aren't you going to just then use it to do the same thing to the other side? I mean, it's just really a lack of education. I fear that we have been. So you know what Devo stands for, right? Devo, the band.
Devolution.
De-evolution, right? This idea that we evolve and then we start devolving. I feel like we're almost purposely devolving. I don't believe in de-evolution, but as a natural thing. But I do believe that we can retard ourselves by denying people basic facts, denying them actual knowledge and filling them with faux knowledge. And I think this happens way too often in our education systems.
Well, not just that, but in the media as well, when the fact checks.
Right, that gets reinforced there.
Yeah,
right.
The fact checks are just factually incorrect, which is never acknowledged. I mean, look, Poynter Institute still has up the fact check on the lab leak theory, calling it a discredited conspiracy theory. I mean,
it's really still up there?
Yeah. I mean, you would think that at some point you'd pull that down. At some point you'd say, hey, there's a lot of scientists who now think that it probably did come from that lab, but we'll never be able to prove it because Ralph Barrick spent or Peter Daszak spent a year trying to label everybody who talked about it as some sort of nut. And so now we have no way of going back.
And they tossed a lot of the evidence.
Yeah, exactly. And, all I can say is that if the left is successful in shutting down free speech, which I think would be hard to do, but if they were to do it, the only effective response at that point would, if you get rid of the First Amendment, would be a vigorous demonstration of the actual intended purpose of the Second Amendment.
I that's very well put. I know it's going to be misinterpreted by some and probably overwroughtly, but that's absolutely correct. Because look, the Second Amendment protects all of our rights, period. And the First Amendment is the most important right we have. We have to be able to think. This is pure Thomas Jefferson. The reason he thought that the First Amendment was so important was because if you can't think on your own what you think and express it, then you're being repressed. And that is going to end up making the world a less better place. We want these ideas, even if they're stupid and bad ideas. Get them out there, argue against them, and show why they're bad. You can't do that if the First Amendment doesn't exist. And notably, we are the only country in the entire freaking world that has anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, the framers were radical
very radical
in the way that they put free speech in as a primary value. And, we haven't always lived up to that ideal, as we talked about last week during the Wilson presidency, when it became a felony to criticize America's entry into World War I. But
the Alien Sedition Acts back in the what was it?
We didn't. Yeah, we had the Alien Sedition Act in 1790 something.
Right. So it's like we started off, kind of wrong-footed to begin with.
And yet we've always steered back to that course. Maybe
absolutely. It's a goal. It's a. This is where we want to get to. Are we going to fail along the way? Of course we are. That's how it works. That's how all of humanity has worked. But we keep striving towards that goal. And if we keep our rules in order with achieving that goal, then we'll be on the right path. Still going to fuck up. There's still going to be problems.
Well,
but if we keep our eye on the prize, we will get there.
All I can do is hope that this current talk about free speech and about limiting speech is just yet another episode like the Espionage Act of 1917 or the Alien and Sedition Act of 1792, where we lose our way but ultimately re-find it again. Because without the First Amendment, this country just won't exist.
Dead in the water.
Yeah. Well, like Michael, always a pleasure. Have a great week. We'll talk to you again next week.
Was that sufficiently? I think that was sufficiently dystopian.
Yeah, I think so. But I was kind of hopeful at the end, which I try to shy away from. But I'll try to do better next time.
We'll work on it next week, guys.
Have a great week, buddy. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
You've been watching the Observations Podcast for Sunday, the 13th of October, 2024. Took me a minute to remember the month. We'll talk to you next time. Have a great week. So long.